We want to take a few minutes this morning, as we do most Lord's Days, not everyone, but most Lord's Days, to bring the Word of God to bear upon the lives of our young people, our kids, our young people who join us every Lord's Day so faithfully, and they watch us. We stand and we sing songs like this, and they listen to us pray, and they listen to us read the Bible, and they listen to somebody stand up and preach for longer than they really wish he would, and really have no understanding of what in the world are we doing? What's the big deal? And so we've spent the better part of this year taking our kids for a few moments each Lord's Day through this Jesus Storybook Bible, which continues to help them to understand what's the big deal? Why are we making so much of Jesus? And it is because, going all the way back to the book of Genesis, the Bible is a book about Christ. All the way back from before the foundation of the world, God's grand purpose was to bring glory to Himself through His Son Jesus, and going all the way back to the creation, the Bible is God's unfolding plan to bring Jesus into the life of the world that He created and to glorify Himself in the salvation of a people who don't deserve it. People like me, people like you. Well, we've made our way into the New Testament section of the book, and we're reading a story this morning about a little girl. So maybe this will be a little bit applicable to some of you, not that you're little girls, but a little boy, little girl. Listen to this story. There was once a little girl who didn't get out of bed one morning. Sounds pretty good on one hand, doesn't it? Just lay in bed all day. But there was a problem. She didn't get out of bed one morning, or the next, or the one after that. In fact, she didn't get out of bed for a whole month. You see, she was very sick, and no one knew how to make her better. Her daddy's name was Jairus, and he loved her. One day, the daddy was sitting by her bed, holding her hand, wishing there was something he could do to heal his daughter. "I know," he said. And he jumped to his feet. He put on his coat. He kissed his daughter, ran down the steps, past the servant, out of the house, through the gates, along the road, into the town, up the steps, into the temple. And he fought his way through all the people until at last he found what he was looking for, or more specific, he found who he was looking for. "Jesus," he said, falling at Jesus' feet. "My daughter," he pleaded, "please." But he didn't need to beg, because before he'd even finished speaking, Jesus reached out His hand and helped him and said, "I'll come at once." Jairus' eyes filled with tears. Jesus was coming. Now we've been reading, let me stop there. We've been reading about Jesus' miracles and Jesus' power and what He's able to do. So you understand why Jairus went to Jesus, right? Jesus is omnipotent power. There's nothing He cannot do. If anyone can heal this daughter, it's Jesus. Jairus' eyes filled with tears. Jesus was coming. Everything was going to be all right. Now in those days, of course, they didn't have ambulances, so they had to go by foot. And Jesus' helpers knew that He would heal the sick girl, but they needed to hurry. If Jesus didn't get there soon, it was going to be too late. What does it mean it was going to be too late? What was going to happen to the little girl? She was going to die. That's how serious this was. But everyone was in the way. It was a crowded area, hustling and bustling, jostling and pressing, pushing and shoving, squishing and squashing. The disciples ran ahead, trying to clear the way. And suddenly Jesus stopped. His friends looked back. "What are you doing?" And Jesus asked the question, "Who touched me?" Because in a moment he felt power leave his body. "I did," said a frail little lady looking down at the ground. She was ashamed. You see, this poor lady who had touched Jesus' garment had been sick for 12 years. Can you imagine? 12 years she had been sick and had been unable to find anyone who could help make her well. But she knew if she only touched Jesus' coat, He could heal her. So she touched His coat, and instantly she was well. "We don't have time for this," Jesus' disciples said. But Jesus always had time. He reached out his hands and gently lifted her head. He looked into her eyes and smiled. You believed in me, wiping a tear from her eye, and now you're well. Just then, Jairus' servant rushed up to Jairus, but he was crying. It's too late. Jesus didn't get there in time. Jairus, your daughter's dead. Jesus turned to Jairus. It's not too late. Jesus said, trust me. When they got to Jairus' house, everyone was crying. And Jesus said, I'm going to go wake her up. Some laughed at him because they knew she's dead. Jesus walked into the little girl's bedroom, and there lying in the corner, in the shadows, was the still little figure. Jesus sat on the bed, took her pale, cold hand, and said, little girl, get up. And he reached down into death and gently brought this little girl back to life. This little girl opened her eyes, rubbed her eyes as if she had just woken from a good night's sleep, and jumped out of bed. Jesus threw open the shutters and sunlight flooded the dark room. Are you hungry? Jesus asked. She nodded. And Jesus called to her family, bring this little girl some food to eat. You see, Jesus helped and healed many people just like this. He made blind people see. He made deaf people able to hear. He made lame people. What's a lame person? What can they not do? They can't walk. He made lame people able to walk. Jesus was making sad things come untrue. He was mending a broken world. Which if you go back all the way to Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sinned against God and the world was broken and God brought curses on Adam and Eve and the serpent, life was hard. Life was now painful. Life was broken. There's going to be tears. There's going to be pain. The very struggles that many of us as big kids this morning have brought with us, it all goes back to Genesis 3. But even there in those curses, God made a promise that the seed of the woman, a child of Eve, who is Jesus, we now know, is going to come. He's going to fix it all. So fully that the book of Revelation says there will be, in the final analysis, no more tears, no more suffering, no more pain, no more loneliness, no more hurt. All because of who? Because of Christ. So boys and girls, that's why we're here this morning. That's why every Lord's Day we come and sing, because we, your parents, and even as your pastor, man, this life is hard. It's hard. We don't have all the answers. Sometimes we like to act like we do. But there is one who is the answer. It's Christ. And we come every Lord's Day to turn our hearts to Him. To look to Christ. To bring our hurts to Him. To find the healing. Just like with Jairus' daughter. The healing that can only come through Him.